The airport was alive with the energy of a busy afternoon, the hum of rolling luggage and chatter filling the expansive terminal. Bright sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the bustling scene of passengers hurrying to catch their flights, families reuniting, and travelers seated in rows of chairs scrolling through their phones. Amid the controlled chaos, airline staff worked diligently to ensure smooth operations, directing passengers and answering queries with practiced efficiency. Among the crowd was a black passenger, exuding a quiet confidence as they approached the counter to check in for a first-class flight. Their attire was understated yet sharp, a crisp polo shirt, jeans, and clean sneakers. While casual, their demeanor spoke of someone accustomed to professional settings and international travel. The passenger moved with ease, politely setting their boarding pass and identification on the counter, ready to begin their journey. Behind the counter stood a white hostess, her uniform immaculate and her posture rigid, projecting authority with every movement. Her practiced smile faded the moment her eyes fell on the passenger. Subtle but undeniable, her demeanor shifted to one of cold indifference, her body language betraying her initial assessment. She cast a quick glance at their boarding pass, then at the passenger, her expression tight and guarded, as if skeptical of their legitimacy in a premium class. Her dismissive attitude was unmistakable to those nearby. She barely acknowledged the polite greeting of the passenger, instead focusing on the details of their ticket with an exaggerated precision. Her lips pursed as she scanned the barcode, her tone flat and clipped. "You're flying first class?" she asked, the question dripping with condescension. Her gaze flicked to the passenger's casual outfit, an eyebrow raised as if their appearance alone invalidated their presence in the premium line. "Are you sure this isn't for economy?" The passenger, calm but visibly taken aback, replied firmly, "Yes, I am." "Is there a problem?" The hostess chuckled under her breath, rolling her eyes before gesturing dismissively at the computer screen. "Well, I suppose if you can afford it." Her voice trailed off, but the implication was clear. Her patronizing remark was audible enough for those in line behind the passenger to hear, eliciting awkward glances from some and whispered murmurs among others. Nearby staff exchanged uncertain looks, sensing the tension. One junior attendant appeared particularly uncomfortable, nervously adjusting her scarf but remaining silent. The hostess, emboldened by her own bias and perhaps sensing no immediate consequences, leaned into her role as gatekeeper, asking unnecessary questions about the passenger's itinerary and needlessly verifying details that were already clear. "Do you have your payment confirmation?" she asked, her tone sharp. "Sometimes people mix up their tickets." The passenger maintained their composure, though their jaw tightened imperceptibly. "Everything you need is right there. I believe you'll find everything in order." The subtle but undeniable hostility began to draw attention. Travelers in adjacent lines turned their heads, their curiosity piqued by the unusual exchange. Some fidgeted uncomfortably, torn between stepping in or staying silent, while others whispered to one another about the unfolding situation. The hostess, seemingly satisfied with her moment of dominance, huffed and begrudgingly handed back the passenger's documents. "Fine, you're all set," she said curtly, her words devoid of the customary courtesy extended to other travelers. The passenger took their ticket and ID with a steady hand, their poise unshaken. "Thank you," they said simply, their tone cool but pointed. It was a dignified response, one that contrasted sharply with the hostess's rude demeanor. As they turned to leave, the hostess muttered something under her breath, just loud enough to be heard by those closest. "People like that think they own the world now," she said, her voice laced with disdain. The words hung in the air like a spark threatening to ignite a fire. A few passengers gasped audibly, while others exchanged shocked glances. One man standing nearby began recording on his phone, his expression one of disbelief. The black passenger paused briefly, the weight of the remark hitting them like a gust of cold wind. They turned slightly, locking eyes with the hostess. There was no need for words. The look they gave spoke volumes. It wasn't anger, it was a quiet strength, a refusal to be diminished by ignorance. The tension in the air was palpable as the passenger walked toward the boarding gate, their head held high. Behind them, murmurs of disapproval rippled through the line. Some condemned the hostess's behavior, while others chose silence, unwilling to involve themselves in the matter. The hostess, however, seemed unbothered, standing with arms crossed and a smug expression, unaware that her actions had set in motion events that would soon turn her world upside down. The stage was set, the conflict simmering just beneath the surface. What had begun as an ordinary day at the airport was about to become a turning point, not just for the passenger, but for everyone who had witnessed the exchange. The black passenger was no ordinary traveler. Behind their modest and unassuming demeanor lay a story of remarkable achievement and dedication. A highly accomplished individual, they held a prestigious position, perhaps as the director of the very airline they were flying with, or as a high-ranking executive overseeing its operations. Their presence in the terminal that day wasn't merely about catching a flight. It was part of their commitment to upholding the company's core values. Known for their belief in humility, the passenger often chose to travel incognito, dressed casually, and avoiding the trappings of wealth or status. This approach allowed them to observe firsthand how staff interacted with passengers and ensured that the airline maintained its promise of excellence and inclusivity. For them, the experience of every customer, regardless of their background or appearance, was a direct reflection of the company's mission and integrity. Despite their success, the passenger had not forgotten their roots or the struggles they had faced along the way. They had risen through the ranks of a competitive industry, overcoming challenges that would have deterred many. Their journey was one of perseverance, guided by the values of respect and equality. They carried these principles into their leadership, striving to create an environment where everyone, from staff to customers, felt valued and respected. In stark contrast, the white hostess operated with a very different ethos. She had worked at the airline for years, and while her polished exterior and professional demeanor suggested competence, her interactions with passengers often told another story. The hostess was known among colleagues for her sharp tongue and tendency to judge passengers based on appearances. Her biases, deeply ingrained and unchecked, influenced how she treated those who didn't fit her narrow perception of what a premium traveler should look like. Time and again, she had dismissed and belittled passengers from marginalized backgrounds, using her position behind the counter as a shield for her prejudices. Complaints had been made about her behavior, but they rarely gained traction. In a fast-paced industry, such incidents were often brushed aside, and the hostess felt emboldened by the lack of consequences. To her, the counter was more than just a workspace. It was a stage where she could assert her perceived superiority. Her colleagues had mixed feelings about her. Some admired her efficiency, while others were uneasy about her dismissive attitude toward certain passengers. A few had even witnessed her prejudiced remarks but remained silent, either out of fear of confrontation or reluctance to disrupt the status quo. The hostess's behavior was an open secret, one that lingered in the background of the bustling terminal. That day, as the black passenger approached the counter, the hostess's assumptions and biases collided with the passenger's quiet dignity. She had no idea who she was addressing, nor the implications her behavior would soon carry. What she saw was just another traveler she could judge and undermine, someone she assumed had no power to challenge her authority. The stage was set for a confrontation that would not only expose the hostess's prejudice, but also serve as a turning point for the entire team working behind that counter. Little did she know, the passenger she dismissed so casually held the very keys to the future of the airline and the power to ensure that her actions would not go unnoticed. The airport terminal bustled with activity as travelers hurried to their gates. Amid the chaos, the black passenger approached the counter, clutching their boarding pass for a premium seat. They radiated quiet confidence, but their casual attire and understated demeanor immediately caught the eye of the white hostess, whose judgmental gaze hardened as they drew closer. The hostess leaned slightly toward a colleague, whispering with a smirk, "What are the chances this one's in the wrong line?" Her tone dripped with mockery as she turned back to the counter, her expression a mask of disdain. As the passenger presented their boarding pass, she barely glanced at it, before scoffing audibly. "Are you sure you're in the right line?" she asked, her voice loud enough to draw the attention of nearby passengers. Her words were laced with condescension, and the pointed emphasis on "you" left little doubt about her intentions. The passenger, maintaining composure, replied politely, "Yes, I'm certain. This is my boarding pass for business class." The hostess raised an eyebrow, holding the boarding pass up to the light as if scrutinizing its authenticity. "Well," she said, dragging out the word, "this doesn't look right. Maybe you should double-check with the economy desk." The passenger remained calm, though the humiliation was clear in their eyes. "It's valid," they assured her. "I'd appreciate it if you could process it." Instead of complying, the hostess smirked and held up the line further. "You must understand," she said, her voice dripping with false politeness. "It's not every day we see people like you in this section." Her remark, thinly veiled as professionalism, hung in the air, cutting deeper than the words themselves. Other passengers in line shifted uncomfortably, some averting their gazes, while others began murmuring. A few pulled out their phones, discreetly recording the escalating interaction. "I've paid for this ticket," the passenger stated firmly, trying to assert their right without losing their dignity. "I'd like to board my flight." The hostess crossed her arms, standing tall with a smug grin. "Let's just say I've seen people try this trick before," she said dismissively. "You can't board without proper credentials." At this point, a fellow passenger stepped forward. "I've seen their boarding pass," the bystander said. "It's valid. Why are you making this so difficult?" The hostess shot the bystander a glare. "Sir, I don't think you understand the situation. Please stay out of it." Her tone was icy, signaling that any further intervention would be unwelcome. The black passenger, still calm but visibly hurt, realized that reasoning with the hostess would lead nowhere. They quietly collected their boarding pass and stepped aside, their composed demeanor masking a growing determination. The humiliation they had just endured was palpable, but it wasn't the end of the story. Around the counter, the atmosphere grew tense. Passengers whispered among themselves, and the awkward silence of complicit staff members was deafening. Some appeared sympathetic, but no one dared to openly challenge the hostess, whose authority felt untouchable. As the black passenger walked away, their expression was not one of defeat, but of quiet resolve. To the hostess, It seemed as though she had upheld her imagined standards for the airline. Little did she know the situation she had created would soon spiral beyond her control. Witnesses continued to talk among themselves, with some expressing outrage at the blatant prejudice they had just observed. A few passengers approached airline staff, filing complaints about the incident, while others discreetly shared the footage they had recorded on social media. The hostess, oblivious to the storm brewing around her, continued her work, unaware that her actions had set in motion a chain of events that would bring about her reckoning. After the flight landed, the incident at the counter quickly became a subject of hushed whispers among passengers and airline staff alike. It was revealed to the airline's management that the black passenger was no ordinary traveler. In fact, they were the director of the airline, conducting an unannounced inspection of the airline's operations, including the conduct of its employees. The news spread like wildfire through the terminal, and the hostess, who had previously felt secure in her position, began to realize the full magnitude of her mistake. The realization hit her hard as management, now fully aware of the incident, informed her that her actions were under review. Panic set in as she processed the information, her self-assurance quickly crumbling. She had dismissed and belittled the director of the company. Not only had she been rude and disrespectful, but she had also acted out of bias, letting her prejudices shape her actions. The thought of facing the consequences of her behavior sent her into a spiral of regret, but it was too late to undo her actions. The following day, a meeting was scheduled, and the atmosphere in the airline's leadership office was tense. The passenger, now revealed to be the director, addressed the leadership team and a group of staff members, including the hostess. The room was quiet, everyone waiting for the director's comments. With calm but firm authority, the director recounted the incident from their perspective. They described how, despite presenting a valid business-class ticket, they had been treated with disdain, as if they didn't belong. The director emphasized how the hostess's behavior was not only unprofessional, but also deeply disrespectful and rooted in bias. The respect of our passengers is fundamental to the success of this airline, the director stated, their voice steady and controlled. Every passenger, no matter their appearance or background, should be treated with dignity and professionalism. That's a standard we must uphold. The hostess, now fully aware of the situation, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The words hit hard, but she knew she could not deny the gravity of her actions. The realization sank in that her prejudices had been exposed, and that she had allowed her biases to dictate how she treated someone simply because of how they looked. The director's words were followed by a period of reflection as the leadership team quietly absorbed the message. The hostess, who had been caught in a web of her own making, could not avoid facing the consequences of her actions. "The behavior I witnessed yesterday will not be tolerated here," the director continued. "The company's values must align with treating every individual fairly, with respect and without judgment, based on appearance or background." The room was silent as the hostess sat, now fully aware that her actions had not only harmed the passenger, but also threatened the integrity of the company. The director made it clear that an investigation would follow, and that this incident would be used to reinforce the importance of inclusivity and respect across all levels of the airline. The power dynamic had shifted, and the hostess now found herself facing the reality of her actions. The director's leadership was now unmistakably clear, and the hostess would have to confront the full weight of the consequences. As the meeting concluded, she knew that this was only the beginning of the reckoning. The fallout from the incident was swift and decisive. The hostess, whose behavior had become a symbol of unprofessionalism and bias, faced immediate consequences. After a thorough review of the incident, the airline announced her termination, citing a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination and misconduct. The airline's leadership issued a public apology to the director, not only acknowledging the unacceptable treatment they had endured, but also addressing the broader implications of the incident. The statement emphasized the airline's commitment to inclusivity, fairness, and respect for all passengers, regardless of their background. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, the director turned the incident into a pivotal teaching moment. They spearheaded the launch of a comprehensive diversity and sensitivity training program for all employees, from frontline staff to executives. The program was designed to confront and dismantle unconscious biases, ensuring every passenger experience was marked by dignity and professionalism. Incidents like this are not just about one person's actions, the director stated during an internal address to the company. They reveal gaps in our system, in our training, and in our culture. It's our responsibility to address those gaps and set a standard that reflects the values we claim to hold. The transformation within the airline was immediate and noticeable. New policies were implemented, emphasizing equitable treatment for all passengers. A revamped hiring process was introduced, prioritizing diversity and inclusion at every level of the organization. Employees were encouraged to report discriminatory behavior without fear of retaliation, fostering an environment of accountability. Under the director's leadership, the airline began to earn a new reputation. Passengers, once wary of potential bias, noticed the shift in how staff engaged with them. Customer feedback highlighted the warm, respectful interactions that had become the norm, and the company's commitment to inclusivity became a cornerstone of its brand identity. The director's vision extended beyond internal changes. They collaborated with other industry leaders to advocate for systemic reform in the aviation sector, pushing for industry-wide standards on diversity and equity. Their efforts inspired other airlines to adopt similar measures, creating a ripple effect of change. For the hostess, the repercussions were a sobering reminder of the consequences of prejudice. Her dismissal served as a message to others within the organization. Professionalism and respect were non-negotiable. The airline's transformation was a testament to the director's resilience and leadership. What began as a moment of personal humiliation became a catalyst for systemic change, turning a painful incident into an opportunity to reshape an entire company for the better. The airline underwent a remarkable transformation, embodying the values of respect, inclusivity, and professionalism at every level. Under the director's leadership, the company shifted its culture from one of implicit biases to one of equity and dignity for all passengers and employees alike. Months after the incident, the director stood at the boarding gate of a busy terminal, observing the boarding process of another flight. The scene was vastly different from the one they had experienced. Airline staff warmly greeted every passenger, offering assistance with genuine smiles and professional care. The atmosphere exuded an unmistakable sense of mutual respect and unity. The director watched as a family with young children was helped to their seats, as an elderly couple received patient assistance, and as a casually dressed solo traveler was treated with the same attentiveness as a business-class passenger in a suit. This was the airline they had envisioned, a place where every person, regardless of their appearance or status, felt valued and welcomed. Employees now carried themselves with a renewed sense of pride and purpose. The diversity and sensitivity training implemented after the incident had not only educated the staff but also empowered them to take ownership of their roles as ambassadors of the airline. Feedback from passengers confirmed the effectiveness of these changes. Words like inclusive, caring, and exceptional service began appearing in reviews and testimonials, painting a picture of an airline that had truly evolved. For the director, this transformation was deeply personal. They reflected on the painful encounter that had sparked this change, recognizing how it had forced the company to confront its shortcomings. What began as a moment of humiliation had become a turning point, inspiring systemic reform that extended beyond their airline and into the industry as a whole. Their efforts had garnered attention far and wide. Industry peers sought their advice on implementing similar policies, and the airline became a model of progressive leadership. Conferences and panels featured the director sharing their story, emphasizing the importance of challenging biases and building organizations grounded in fairness and empathy. As the final passengers boarded the flight, the director took a deep breath, filled with pride and a sense of accomplishment. The once dismal incident had become a powerful catalyst for growth and improvement, leaving a legacy that would endure. As the flight's door closed, signaling its readiness for departure, the director turned to a member of the crew. "Great work today," they said with a nod of approval. Walking away from the gate, they felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing they had not only reshaped a company, but had also contributed to a larger movement for equity and respect. Respect isn't reserved for the elite. It's the foundation of service for all.